World of Warcraft should end, huh? Well, that's an opinion, alright. And you know what's funny? I actually said this exact same thing just a couple of weeks ago, and I was recommended this video, so I guess it's a really good opportunity to just kind of say what I have to say about this, because I truly believe that World of Warcraft should have ended with the Lich King. I thought Cataclysm had the potential to be the perfect settings for a reset, and unfortunately Blizzard fumbled the bag so hard on that, because Cataclysm should have happened years into the future. It shouldn't have happened like immediately after the Lich King. I think it should have happened after all the heroes have perished, or maybe like a few familiar ones that live forever like Night Elf, even though they technically don't live forever anymore, just kind of survived, but it shouldn't have happened right away. It didn't make any sense, and it completely botched the story, and nowadays we see where it led. So, it's just really bad, but I haven't watched this video, so let's hear what he has to say, and I'm kinda gonna add my things on top of that.
Dead, broken, creatively bankrupt.
True.
These are all ways retail
You forgot cringe, but I'll forgive you for that.
World of Warcraft has been described over the past couple of years. And yet, despite all the criticism, the game keeps on chugging, and is still Blizzard's most recognizable property. It's not just another MMO. Like it or not, it's an intrinsic part of gaming culture, and it's almost impossible to imagine a world where Blizzard would deliberately kill off their flagship IP, at least not while it's still raking in literal billions for them each year.
Yeah, what? Wait, 14 to 16 billion as of 2025, World of Warcraft has generated an estimated billion. Oh, in total lifetime revenue. Okay, bro, my heart sank for a moment. Holy, if this was yearly, I'm... Oh my god. Okay, no, okay, it makes sense. Lifetime revenue, that's crazy. Wow, that's a lot of money. So they're still making millions per year, just looking at that. But we already knew that. It's insane, man. The numbers World of Warcraft is pulling are still crazy. And the money is all for microtransaction. I bet that if you had a chart of where Blizzard is getting the money from the most likely it would be from people purchasing the expansion. The least amount would have been from subs, because only whales remaining, and the most would be microtransaction. I can almost stake my life on it.
And yet, whether it's 5 years from now or 50 years from now, assuming we survive that long, World of Warcraft will eventually have to end. Maybe not shut down outright, but for new content to stop being made and for it to go into a sort of maintenance mode, like so many MMOs before it. While I don't despise retail's narrative with the same passion a lot of others do, I do agree that it's very little left for it to explore. We far exceeded the scope of what the Warcraft universe was originally conceived to be. Thematically, it's all over the place. If you don't believe me, next time you make a new character, pick the classic starting experience. Go through those old zones, then move on to the newer ones, and tell me how invested you actually feel in what's going on, assuming you can even follow the narrative at all. If you didn't know anything about the lore and find yourself questing in or even just exploring the old world, you'd think the Horde and the Alliance are still in active brutal conflict with each other.
Oh, he actually hit the nail right on the head there. He's 100% right, and that's the real problem with World of Warcraft these days. And I've spoken about this so many times before, because Blizzard is so lazy, they would not make a cohesive storyline. So instead of going the FF14 route of literally putting you at the bottom and forcing you to climb your way all to the top and actually see everything the game once had to offer for yourself, Blizzard is just giving you like a hodgepodge of expansions piled up on top of each other that no new player can ever possibly grasp. It's like Blizzard already assumes that you played everything, and now they're like, okay, you know what, like, who cares? Here's a new expansion, like, go in, do your thing, and that's it. But that's the major issue, and that's why the game cannot garner a new player base anymore, because no new player would actually go into Warcraft, do the base story, and say like, okay, I'm getting things here, and then they go and they hit like Dragonflight, and they're like, what the hell is going on? I don't get anything. And don't even get me started on the fact that you literally need to find Chromie for yourself for her to actually be relevant and do like the time walking stuff. And also asking for new players to just do time walking and go back to do old content. It's just so weird, because you're getting an abridged version of a vast game that used to offer such an extensive lore. And you cannot bombard a player with all of that at once. It's really detrimental for the game, and I wish Blizzard would have just made it like FF14, where everything is on one account. You start from the bottom, you reach to the top, and that's it. You don't have to do it ever again. But it does take you quite a while to reach there, and you have to go through the entire story. Now, yeah, you can skip the cutscenes. You can do all of that, and you can expedite the process 100%. But new players who actually want to be immersed inside of the game would never do that. And the fact that you give them the option to experience like all the raids and the old content and make it still relevant because it's all scaled, that's the best thing about it. But WoW doesn't even do that. You just go through all the raids and you blaze through everything and nobody cares. Because Blizzard is like, oh, you just need to farm mounts, right? Like, that's it. You just want the reigns of Invincible. Come on, dog. Like, what are we doing here? But again, Blizzard would never spend any amount of resources that are not going towards microtransactions. They would never put the time and investment and money into developing a really great new player experience. They would never do that.
But then you go to the Dragon Isles and it's suddenly all about friendship and cooperation. And if you happen to be playing on a PvP server, that narrative inconsistency is even further exasperated.
Of course, because you're literally skipping all of the expansions. So you're like, okay, what the hell is going on? Who are these new characters? Why should I care about them? All of that goes right out the window.
And I get it, stuff like that is not important to everyone, but if I were a new player, I think I'd struggle to figure out what World of Warcraft is actually.
I think it is important to everyone, in a certain way, to a certain extent, of course, because you do know about the story. Again, nobody really read all of these stories in classic WoW either, but you kind of grasp it from the players talking about it and the videos about it, like machinima videos. There's a culture and a community that's developing around the story. Whether you like it or not, you're gonna be inside of it. So a good story does affect you. It's just a matter of how much.
Even about and why I should care. I've talked about this in a previous video, but just a quick refresher for those that don't know. Blizzard originally wanted to make a Warhammer Fantasy RTS, but couldn't get the rights and ended up creating their own setting instead, heavily inspired by it. And that's how Warcraft came to be. And I think a lot of fans would agree that some of Warcraft's best storytelling came from that period, when it stayed closer to those roots while still doing its own thing. Now, back in 2015, Games Workshop discontinued the Warhammer Fantasy tabletop. There were a few reasons for that, depending on who you ask, but to grossly simplify it, the main one was the low sales compared to its 40k counterpart. But another big issue was just how bloated the setting had become. There was so much old content, so many outdated models, and so much legacy stuff that would have needed to be updated to match current standards. And realistically, the time and resources required to go back and fix all of that instead of releasing new exciting content would have probably not make a lot of sense from a business standpoint. So instead, they did the whole End of Time storyline, wipe the setting clean and move everything into Age of Sigmar. And ironically, I think World of Warcraft is starting to reach that same point as its inspiration. Yes, they're trying to revamp some of the older zones while still expanding the world, but with so much existing content that clashes with the direction they want to go, I don't think it's really manageable. It's like trying to restore an old car that's been patched countless times over the years. You keep swapping in new parts, but at some point, no matter how many updates you make, the original frame just can't support everything you're trying to shove in it.
True, and that's why they retcon everything. Because you have so much bloat inside of the game, you're bound to have a few things clashing. That's why they retconned like 40% of Shadowlands, because nothing made sense. The Jailer didn't make any sense. Like Sylvanas Yas Slay Queen arc didn't make any sense. Like burning the tree, then doing all of this stuff, and doing this and that, and like humiliating Bolvar in the trailer. Nothing makes sense, not in terms of power scaling, not in terms of story, not in terms of character design, nothing. And that's why they're kind of retconning everything and pretending like Shadowlands didn't happen, because it doesn't make any sense. And we just have way too much bloat inside of the game. It is bound for a reset.
That's where I feel Warcraft is at right now, standing on the husk of its former self, desperately trying to shoehorn in the story it really wants to tell. Of course, the writers could just keep ignoring all that and push the setting in whatever direction they want,
Of course, that's what they do because they are incapable of writing a good story. You know why? Because every single Blizzard employee nowadays is either a wine mom or a boo millennial. And this is something that I say in almost every single video. These people, the reason that they are incapable of writing a good story is because they live their entire lives in sheltered community. So what they're basing their opinions on is everything they saw on TV. Basically, that's why we're getting storybook for children level of writing. That's why we don't get any cool badass heroes and villains anymore, and that's why we have the deterioration of masculinity inside of World of Warcraft. I mean, look at this. What in God? Can you tell me what the hell that is? I know it's a Drakthir, okay? I know that. What in God's name am I looking at? This is massively cringe. And again, it just ties to the design and the philosophy that Blizzard uphold these days. They can't even call the game Warcraft because the VP, who is responsible for the game, thinks it's intimidating. It is massively cringe. It is actually abhorrent because if you go back and watch old World of Warcraft and even like Warcraft, concept art and all of that stuff, you see how brutal and barbaric it was. It was peak savagery and everyone enjoyed it. I mean, for God's sake, it was supposed to be a Warhammer game, right? I mean, you can only imagine how extensive it was back in the day, and nowadays we don't get anything good because the writers are only capable of writing a story that they can imagine, and since they live their entire lives in sheltered communities, they don't know what happens outside of the walls. They're like the Eldians from Attack on Titan. They're clueless. They don't know what the average person feels like because the only time they had to struggle with something is asking the waiter for a check. And they all, you know, that the type of people who are writing current World of Warcraft story are the people who get a conniption whenever someone calls their phone. You know they're too afraid to answer. So it is what it is, man. Like, you know that. So that's why we're getting all of these watered down version of a once good story. It's just garbage. Nobody wants that anymore. And nowadays with Chris Metzen, you thought it would be different, and it is to a certain extent. But at the same time, he's not going to save the entire company. He's just one man, and there's only so much one can do.
Of how much it doesn't make sense, even from a gameplay perspective. But I like to, perhaps somewhat naively, believe that there's still some creatives at Blizzard with at least an ounce of integrity left. At some point, someone has to realize that this can't go on for much longer. You can't just keep introducing new characters and concepts only to trivialize them in expansion later. At that point, it's just straight up bad writing. So what do we do?
Wow,
well,
who would have
part
thunk?
of me wants to say burn it all down in some badass apocalyptic event and start fresh. As a player, I don't think I'd actually...
No, do that. That's good. That's what we need. Just burn it all. Say it was all N'Zoth nightmare. Okay, just do it. Do not be afraid. Just go for it. Balls deep, boys. Like, do that. Okay, please do. I cannot watch Thrall and Anduin cry one more time. I literally cannot. Just reset. Just nuke everything, okay? Drop a meteor. I do not care. Just end it all. I don't want to see that happen. Start fresh. Clean slate.
Like that. Besides, I don't think any definitive resolution Blizzard could come up with for such a legendary franchise would ever feel truly satisfying. As antithetical as it sounds to everything I've complained about, the only way out of this might be for Blizzard to fully commit to the world of peace-crafted direction they've been heading in for the past several expansions. The way I would personally handle it would be after the world...
Bro, you see that trailer? They literally just cried throughout the entire trailer and that was it. Oh my god.
Soul Saga concludes and we inevitably defeat whatever cosmic big bad they have planned for us, we get a final expansion that's fully dedicated to the war between the Alliance and the Horde one last time. Blizzard should commit to remaking as much as the old world as resources allow and create separate quest lines for the Horde and the Alliance, expanding on each stage of the conflict. No old gods, no legion, no outside interference this time. Both sides are going all out to essentially wipe each other off the map. The catalyst for this fifth and final war could be anything. Maybe Terralion goes a little too light crazy and kills someone from the Horde during the previous expansion or something like that. The specifics don't really matter for this hypothetical. Either way, after a series of grueling battles, both sides somehow realized that war really isn't the answer and finally squashed the beef for good. In a final cinematic, it stated that it might take time, maybe years, maybe decades, to fully resolve all the cultural differences, but it's implied that eventually.
Okay, apologies for the random pause, but I really just want to say that Dragonflight is so ass, bro. Like, holy. I'm doing the new player experience right now in World of Warcraft because I wanted to see what people were talking about and how Midnight Expansion was so great. I haven't played since BFA, so it was a kind of a neat little experiment to do. So I started fresh, I didn't use any boost whatsoever, and now I'm going through this expansion. And I swear to God, the writing is so dumb and inconsistent. Guys, you would not have any idea what the hell is going on. So, in case you don't know, there's a dude called Rathian, which is a really cool human that turns into a really badass dragon. And one quest, you literally ride him into battle with like a million orcs and dragons and all that stuff. Really cool sequence. Okay, nice. You end that. 2 quests later, you literally escort his caravan because he cannot fight a few whelps. Do you understand the disparity between these two? Like, oh man, they cannot even fathom power scaling. They don't even realize that. Like, the current writers are just on some different shit. Honestly, look at what the hell is going on. I mean, it's like the quests are being thrown around liberally and everyone, okay, you know what? We just need to fill this area with something, so just do that. Oh, we need this, so okay, just do this, whatever, who cares? Like, nobody really cares about that anyway. It's so frustrating because quests used to have a really good line you could walk through, and it didn't necessarily need to be a straight one, right? They did with all of the expansion. They did it in a straight line. But in classic World of Warcraft, like vanilla, that wasn't the case. And it was so good because it made sense in terms of power scaling, in terms of lore. Nowadays, that's not the case. And we lost that. And you can see it night and day difference with Dragonflight and previous expansions.
The two factions will join together and work toward a new peaceful age for Azeroth. This way, the world is essentially left intact for players to still enjoy, while Blizzard can do a time skip toward a potential World of Warcraft 2 that's more in line with their current sensibilities. Ideally, this could even tie into a fourth RTS game that connects the two. Meanwhile, they could finally do Classic Plus for the legacy players who preferred Warcraft the way it was before. That way, instead of having 5 different versions of the same game, you'd have the retail version still receiving patches but no longer new content, Classic Plus.
So I disagree with what he's saying. I think that you should delete all the versions of World of Warcraft and make Classic Plus the new standard. I think that Classic Plus should be a reset to the story and a complete overhaul. That's my opinion. I think that you should say that everything that happened in retail was like an Azoth nightmare or something of the sort, and Classic Plus is true Warcraft lore. That's what you need to do, in my opinion.
In World of Warcraft 2, potentially. Of course, that's just what makes sense to me. It feels like the most intuitive and painless option. Again, it's entirely possible, if not more likely, that they'll just keep adding on to the current game until it dies, but just saying that wouldn't make for an interesting video, would it?
And they will do just that because the only thing that Blizzard cares about is their next financial quarterly update. That's all they care about. They don't see anything past their monthly earning. They truly don't. Their scope is so narrow. All they care about is shareholders seeing a graph that goes like this. Okay? If a graph goes slowly like this instead of this, then Blizzard is cooked.
For their next MMO, if they really don't want to do a World of Warcraft 2, I suppose another option would be...
Hell.
It's about damn time. Oh, it didn't say damn. It's a trailer. Man, I need to play StarCraft. I was never a huge RTS fan, though. It is what it is. That's so dope. That's so sick. I really need to play that game, or at the very least watch the story. I heard it was so good. And I don't think they ruined that, right? They just didn't make a sequel. So, I guess to a certain extent, it's good. Okay, yeah, seems to be the end of the video, right? Yeah, he doesn't speak anymore here. I mean, great video. Great video. You know what? I'm actually impressed. He talked about some serious issues here, and he touched very specific points that I completely agree with. But at the same time, I don't think the solution is putting retail in maintenance mode because no one would play that ever. The whales don't really care if there's not any continuation to the game. They would just drop off. You should make Classic Plus the new standard. 100%. You should use a new engine. You should use new everything. It would be a perfect opportunity for a reset to the game and just change the story. Continue it. Make sure it's a spiritual successor to the Warcraft universe. But just, build it anew and make it great again. And it can be easily done if you put competent people at the top. But Blizzard would never do that. Because we know which agenda they're trying to push on us, and it's super cringe, man. All of that stuff, sorry for saying cringe so many times, it's just literally so revolting, it makes me want to hurl. It's just so disgusting what happened to my most beloved MMORPG, and now I'm forced to be a refugee in other MMOs, even though the communities did really accept me well in other places. You never really feel at home, unless it's World of Warcraft. Us WoW players are just cursed, man. Like, we're cursed. We're like the Gilneans. Like, it is what it is, man. We're just cursed to wander, searching for a good MMO that scratches our itch, and we'll never have that.